This is a take. Okay, well first we're going to introduce you to Chris. This is Chris. Chris today will be our cameraman. Chris, you want to say hello?
Hello, hi, how are you?
Any words for the camera?
Yeah, good luck.
Oh, thanks a lot, I can use it. Okay, so now you get to be the cameraman. Okay, and I'll say, this is Sid.
Hi, I'm Sid.
Okay, and Tariq.
Hi.
Okay, and Firma's hiding back there.
I'm hiding. Hi.
Okay, there's Firma. These are three Zec attorneys.
Oh, I'm part of this. Okay.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Okay. Three Zec attorneys. I don't know. You want to talk about any important case that you have been involved in?
Well, I don't know. Can we? We just settled a very large federal racketeering suit in which Chevron was the plaintiff, and it was about the company litigation, and we're quite pleased that we got our client out.
Is that There's nothing like putting you on the spot to get the lively response.
Yeah.
This is as guarded as can be.
Well, you know how these settlement agreements work.
Exactly.
And mutual non-disparagement clauses. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about talking about a different case? Then you don't have to be on the spot. What was the thing you were talking about before? The other one? Can you talk about that, or not even that one?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I mean, it's post-conviction. I think we've been allowed to talk about it for
I think
a bunch of
post-conviction
years.
you're allowed.
How about we can't edit this? Okay. I really want to. The case was called the West Memphis. Should I talk to you?
Yeah, you can talk to me.
West
Or you can talk to Chris, actually.
You should talk to Chris. Yeah.
Talk to Chris.
I'd rather no.
You can talk to me. Okay.
You're gonna play Oprah.
Okay.
It was the West Memphis 3 case. It was very famous, got a lot of press coverage. And there were they were teenagers at the time. Now they're already in their 30s. It's been going on for a while. But there were 3 teenage defendants, and I don't remember exactly how many. I should really know this. 3 or 4 boys. They were like 7 years old at the time. They were killed, and their bodies were found. We shouldn't get too graphic, right?
No, you get graphic. Go right ahead.
They were found
upsetting,
outside in water, and their bodies were all bitten up and a little bit torn apart, and we'll
Bitten up by
leave it at that.
By the animals in the water?
By the animals. They were like turtle bites.
Oh, turtle bites.
And other worse things that people got very upset about. It wasn't clear at the time that the damage to the bodies was done by animals. It was thought that the people that killed the boys had also desecrated their bodies. Yeah. Anyway, so...
And were you defending the people who killed the boys?
No. So I was involved in a case as a law student, post-conviction, to try to get the conviction overturned.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And what happened was there were these 3 teenage boys, like I said before. They were called the West Memphis 3 because they happened in West Memphis, Arkansas.
Right.
And they were metalheads.
Yeah.
No, Arkansas. They were metalheads into like Metallica and heavy metal music, and they wore a lot of black. I don't know if they had piercings at the time, and the crime was pinned on them. And they were convicted. One of them was sentenced to death. The other ones were sentenced to, I think, life.
It's terrible.
Yeah. It was
terrible. I mean, it's terrible if they didn't do it.
I believe that they didn't do it.
Why do you believe that?
Sufficiency of the evidence, or?
Was there DNA? Was there DNA evidence?
There was a little bit of DNA that came out well after their conviction, which actually matched to one of the victims' dads or stepdads. And a lot of them had stepdads. So I don't know, I can't keep track of like if it was like a biological father or like a stepdad.
Right.
But anyway, Berlinger.
No turtles in the family, though.
No, Berlinger, who's the guy who made the film related to our case, also made a film about this case, and he was actually in West Memphis as it was happening, so he really got it from the beginning. Wow. And you're really gonna have to edit this down. It's gonna be too long for the submission. It's a very long story. But anyway, he made a film about it, and the film was screened on HBO. It was an HBO film, and a lot of people saw it and really got behind the defendants and supported them, and a lot of them were super famous, like Johnny Depp and Eddie Vedder, and Eddie Vedder did like a concert and raised money for their defense, and it was a big deal. And Berlinger then, after this film, made a couple more films. Amy Berg just made a film about it. It was just showing.
So, but they got him off.
We were going to be in the movie, the Northwestern Clinic. We were going to be in the movie, and then we couldn't because some legal reason. I don't know.
Were they acquitted? No.
I don't know if you could get Tariq in here.
Yep,
also.
he's in.
Good.
We got him with his
Okay.
red sweater.
This is what we do. We just stand around and talk about cases.
I need to go home. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, Shabbos.
Oh, all right, well, yeah. All right, well, you know what?
It's a really
For
cool
our
story. You should
purposes,
read about it.
this is good. We will read about it. And thanks.
Just
I don't
like-
even want to say anything for the camera. You really put you on the spot now.
I mean, with respect to that case, the West Memphis 3, there's currently an HBO documentary that's being screened, and I think it's interesting.
Is that the Amy Berg film?
I'm not quite sure, but
Oh, so you know about the West Memphis
yes,
3 case too?
right.
I think I read about it. Yeah.
One of the defendants got married while in prison.
Whoa.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
because of Berlinger's film.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Meaning, like, a lot of people saw it and started writing to them, and one woman who wrote to him, they, like, struck up a relationship, and they
Really?
got married while he was in prison.
Wow.
And now that he's, and
That was pretty fortunate, as it turned
yeah,
out.
she's
Yeah.
amazing. I don't know who had, like, to say about this. It was, like, the warden or some judge, but they
Mhm.
weren't even allowed to have, like, a proper wedding. They had it, like, through glass.
That's,
And the
that's
first
lame.
time they were able to, like, touch each other was when he was released.
Oh, no
They had been
conjugal
married for
visits?
years.
Really?
Forget about
That's
that. They weren't allowed to, like, you know,
Right.
touch each other's hands. Nothing.
Huh.
Not even, like, through.
That's
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy in the
Cruel
bubble type
human,
stuff.
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
Crazy story.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Watch the
You're,
movies.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't be more
Bye.
lively.
Thank
On
you.
your case.
Okay. All right.
Wait,
So we-
so are you going to be on television? Is that what this is
Well,
about?
this is for TV. It's like there's this show, Pawn Stars, PAWN.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Pawn stores.
right.
Yeah.
I've seen
Right.
ads.
And so
Yeah.
apparently the makers of Pawn Stars are doing this thing with arbitrators.
Huh.
And so now I'm supposed to go in here and do the rest of the interview.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
which is like making me incredibly stressed out.
Good luck.
See the stress.
You'll be
Okay,
Good
thank
luck.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, here we are.
All right. Next.
All right.
Next phase,
So here's the next phase. You have these questions.
please.
Okay, you got them here.
Thank
Did
you.
we have another copy of the question somewhere?
Yes.
Where was that? Oh, okay. So we're continuing with the questions here. I'm going to take them, put them right here, so you can see them, I can see them. Okay, so you can be the interviewer.
Okay. First question. Tough one. What is your full name?
All right, hold on one sec. Let's put it up here. Okay, this is a very, very official video. Okay, so my full name is Simeon Baum. I am 58 years old, and my job title is I'm president of Resolve Mediation Services, which is a provider of mediation and other neutral services, including arbitration, for which this film is being made. How long have I been in this profession? I've been a lawyer for 30 years, and starting in the early 90s, I became a neutral, both doing mediation and also serving as an arbitrator. And I've been a neutral party, increasingly over time, over the last 20 years. How did I get started? Okay. So there's the long version and the short version of this story. The medium version is that before I went to law school, maybe this is the long version, I was a student of the comparative study of religion. And one of the things that we talked about a lot, or ways we approached the study at that time, was in terms of dialogue. So when I went to law school, I found that some of the approaches that we have in thinking through cases was somewhat different from the contemplative traditions that I'd been studying before I went to law school. And coming out of law school, I found that our adversarial system, for which we serve as arbitrators, has its pros and also its cons. Cons being that we get people to focus on the past, but we don't necessarily have them in the present moving into the future, and that we find people in an adversarial system where somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and it doesn't necessarily encourage the warmest feelings from one party to the other. That the way we think when we're in an adversarial system and context is somewhat more limited than an open, broad type of way of approaching people and thinking and what's important to us that we can find if we're just talking plainly or negotiating or in a mediated context, where I serve as a mediator. So in the early 90s, I decided, when I discovered mediation, that I would become a mediator. And so I made a 5-year plan, and it worked. And so by the end of 5 years, somebody was paying me to mediate, and I was doing some arbitrations too. And then over those next few years, I was a litigator, but my mediation and arbitration practice grew relative to the litigation, to the point where last year I was virtually pretty close to 100% neutral party. I formed Resolve Mediation Services back in the mid-90s on mediators.com, and so that's basically how I got into what I'm doing today. The next question is, what are some challenges that come with the territory? So by the territory, I think we're talking about serving as a neutral party. There are a number of different challenges that come serving as a neutral party. There's the challenges that you face as a mediator that might be somewhat different from the challenges you face as an arbitrator. I'm going to talk about both. As a mediator, unlike a judge or an arbitrator, you don't really have power. You are a neutral, but you don't make a decision that is going to be binding on anybody. And what your job is to help people help themselves, like Jerry Maguire. So one of the biggest challenges serving as a mediator is to be able to basically keep people at the table. If you can keep them talking, my experience shows that over time, people will eventually get to a deal. And so to keep people at the table is really part of the art. People have to feel like they're being heard. They have to feel like they're being respected. They have to feel like when they're speaking, not only are they being heard, but it's making a difference of some kind, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so the ability, whether it's by keeping everybody in a group talking together, or whether it's by talking with people separately, the ability to have people engage in that process and feel good and feel it's productive, that's the art. And that's the challenge, one of the big challenges in mediation. Now in arbitration, arbitrators have power. So, and people are going to be there because they've agreed to arbitrate, and they're bound by some arbitration agreement that's making them go through a process. At the end of that process, somebody, the arbitrator, is going to make a decision. And so the challenge in arbitration is really to have an orderly process, a process where there's a structure versus presentation. Maybe you have opening statements, maybe you don't. There's presentation of the evidence, of witnesses, of documents. There might or might not be cross-examination, or direct examination, cross-examination. And in the end, after having conducted the hearing, there is a decision that the arbitrator has to make. And so the arbitrator's challenge is to, I think, to have a good quality process, is still to have the people know that they have had an opportunity to say what they really need to say, that they've had an opportunity to bring forth the evidence that's going to make a difference, and to have the sense from the arbitrator's involvement that the arbitrator's really listening, really getting what they're saying, and giving them the chance to say what they need to say. So there's a balance between some degree of arbitrator involvement, where you're maybe asking questions, doing a little bit of follow-up, and arbitrator detachment, where the arbitrator waits and listens and doesn't interfere with the way the party presents his own case. The other major challenge in arbitration is making a decision. So for me, for anybody, you really have to listen carefully to try to get a sense of what really was going on. You have to have some way of weighing and judging what evidence seems credible, what doesn't seem credible, and trying to apply your common sense and find what's fair, and also in complex cases to get a sense of what the legal standards are, or the industry or custom of the trade type of standards are. So these are some of the challenges. There are many more in arbitration. Okay, what's the most interesting case that I've ever worked on? Well, again, I'm going to focus my answers here working as a neutral party. And I've had a bunch of interesting matters. I've done 1,000 mediations and arbitrations altogether, maybe more. I've had some very public ones. One where Donald Trump and Steve Rutherford NATO were involved in a matter involving the West Side properties. I had one very exciting one involving the redevelopment of the World Trade Center, where there was a design fees dispute between Dana Liebskin, who was the master planner. In fact, I can show you. This is, these are the original plans of the World Trade Center master plan. I don't know if you can see this. You know, that were produced by Studio Liebskind. I've had this for years, actually. And there was a dispute between Studio Liebskin and the Silverstein properties over the design fees that should be paid to Liebskin in connection with his work, because eventually the design of the Freedom Tower ended up shifting from Liebskin to Skidmore, Owens and Merrill. And actually, right on top of that is this, the battle for Archie, is another matter that I was involved in mediating. But one of the most unusual cases I've been involved in, really, frankly, apart from the neutral ones, was as a lawyer, but moving into mediation, where I was called to take a case to trial just at the last minute before a judge in the commercial division in New York who was kind of a scary guy. And the facts of the case were extraordinary. It involved two people, a man and a woman. He was the president of a company, and she had worked as one of his executives. And for 13 years, while each of them was married to somebody else, they had an affair. And towards the end of that 13 years, they decided to break it off. And the president was going to create a trust and fund that trust for the benefit of this woman, because she was going to leave the company and in connection with the ending of this relationship. When his wife found out about their relationship, which happened before the trust was funded, the trust was never funded. And the case was one where she was looking for the trust to be funded. And it was a pretty big number. So this came to me to litigate, knowing that judge, and knowing the complexity of this case from a human, interpersonal level. I thought the best thing to do with the case was to put it into mediation. And I spent hours looking for the right mediator and found her. And I can't get into the details of that mediation because it's confidential, but I can tell you that the mediation was attended not only by these two people, but also by the wife of this president. And at one point or another, towards the end of that mediation, they got together privately, worked things out with private discussions, and left with a deal and with people actually in tears, and hugging and parting with a feeling of reconciliation. So that was a very satisfying and unusual case. Okay, let's see. Something that the person behind the camera wouldn't know about me. Well, you probably wouldn't know that I did Aikido for 15 years. Probably wouldn't know that, well, you probably do know a little bit since I mentioned it earlier, but I went, when I was a student in the comparative study of religion, before coming to law school, I went to Japan, did my thesis on a Zen temple, and I spent a number of days sitting in silence, facing a wall. I am admitted in New York State, and that's where I practice law. And for this show, I would serve as an arbitrator. Okay, now here's the last thing. I'm supposed to show you how I would take control of the arbitration room if somebody has gotten out of hand. I probably would not resort to Aikido, but there's always that option. We're supposed to do this standing, but I'm going to do it sitting because, frankly, that is the way it would happen. Now, the truth is that really, in an arbitration that I'm conducting, it wouldn't get out of hand. And the reason it wouldn't get out of hand is that if you set the right tone at the beginning, if you show people respect, treat them courteously, listen well, pay good attention, and keep a gauge on what's happening in the room, before things get out of hand, you make little adjustments or little interventions if necessary to keep things under control. That is the truth. But this is for a TV show. So I'm not sure on a wild and crazy TV show how things would be handled if they got out of hand. But I do believe that a technique which I used just yesterday in a mediation that I was in is a simple and easy technique, and it's very effective. And it's simply to whatever it is that people are saying, just intervene. Excuse me. Before you go further, I just want to make sure I'm following you. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm following you on what you've just said. A slight little intervention like that can separate people from their own engagement with each other, and through that active detachment, calm things down. The tone of my voice, the projecting calm, is another way to tone things down. The pacing. If you talk quickly, you speed things up. If you talk at a decent pace, you keep things calm. Now, if people continue to shout, if they're duking it out, I once had a case, actually, truly, with a mediation involving a professional boxer and some managers. And at one point during that case, the professional boxer and another manager were represented by this octogenarian who was a star in the boxing bar. And the lawyers on the other side of the table were two young guys. And at one point during this case, the older lawyer got out of his chair and threatened to beat up the two young guys who were standing there. And, I don't know if I laughed, probably didn't, but we managed to keep that calm too. Fortunately, they had a table between them. So, I don't know if we've got more things to say, or if that's it. I've already told you a little bit about the people at work. You've seen Chris, who's been holding the camera, and now I think as far as telling you about myself, I guess you've heard about that too. But if you want to know a little bit more, you know my age. I've got a lovely wife named Duffy. She no longer looks like this, but more or less the same. And two daughters, Sabrina and Gabby, who are 21 and 23. And here's a picture of Sabrina. She no longer looks like this either, but also similar. Here she is a little bit younger. And here's a book from which I wrote a chapter. A few years ago, I went with the State Department to Russia and did a program on international or on commercial mediation in Russia. Commented on a bill that went into the Duma putting mediation into Russia. And we were in the old stock exchange building that is now owned by the Russian Chamber of Commerce. So here's a picture of the stock exchange. You can see it's a very nice picture. Ever since that trip, there's been a Russian law professor from their equivalent of Harvard Law School. It's called MGU, who comes in the summer, and I meet with her students. And when they come, she usually gives me some sort of gift for speaking with the students. And here we have Ruski Standard, which is a Russian vodka. So I think for our purposes we are done, and I hope you've enjoyed the film. Okay, so now you press the